Hello, my lovely witches. I hope you are all well. I've got something a little bit different for you today, and it's likely to be a much more shaky video because we are going handheld, witching on the fly. So, video for you today about altars and a bit of an altar tour because I have just changed my altar over for Lughnasadh. We're coming up to Lughnasadh here in the southern hemisphere, and I've just redone the altar ready for that season. So I have my little book here on Lughnasadh. This is one of those Llewellyn Sabbats books. There's one for each of the Sabbats. And I was looking up some ideas and reading some lore there. I've also got this book. I am officially, completely, totally and utterly obsessed with mushrooms at the moment. So this book is all about mushrooms and using them in magic and their correspondences, and it's actually really cool. Highly recommend, despite some somewhat weird references to things totally not related, like the author's explaining something and will relate it to Super Mario or some other random pop culture reference that, yeah, very much dates the author in their age. Anyway, all good. This is going to be a rambly video. It's going to be a shaky video. If that's not your jam, just turn off now. If it is your jam and if you want to talk altars with me, I did have some comments and some questions about altars and, you know, where to start with putting things on an altar. Well, I personally do change mine for the seasons, but not everyone does. So, okay, let's start with what have I started with? What is the base? The base of my very first thing I put down is an altar cloth. You can see this one here it's actually a thrifted table runner in summery, sort of autumny colours. And you have to remember, summer here is not like summer in other parts of the world. It is dusty and dry and hot and very earthy. For me, I feel very much that summer is an element of earth, and the opposite to traditionally winter is considered the element of earth. And I can feel that to some extent as well, but we are very definitely in a dry, earthy state. So I start with an altar cloth, and I go with colour schemes loose colour schemes for the seasons. And I tend to choose yellows, oranges, browns, again, earthy colours. I've got my little goddess here. She was another thrifted find, little wheat goddess or wheat fairy or whatever. I've got some shells in there in the back that have come from a variety of different sources. You can see this little bit here. That's actually the end of my athame. I'm not going to try and pull it out because there's too much stuff in front of it. I have this little cauldron full of crystals and feathers that have been picked up over time. There's my little palmistry hand. You can see you've seen before the little tiny sigil in a frame. That's my personal sigil. Then we have a rock painting by an artist called Kira Adams. Look her up on Instagram because her work is so beautiful, very witchy, and she's so prolific. So I actually bought an advent calendar from her this year, and you'll see there's a few more pieces. We've got a couple of little wood slice pieces up there that she did, and we've got a couple more. If we just tuck ourselves in here next to this candle without burning the camera, those two little mushroom pieces. So then we have a little card that I've created with some artwork on it. You can see in all the little pigeonholes, this used to be my dad's old desk, and in all the little pigeonholes I have some spell jar spells. I've got little figurines from Harry Potter. I've got rocks. I've got all sorts of things. I've got lots of spell work that once it's sort of complete, just gets tucked in there. Small spells. My singing bowl, more rocks. There's cards and divination tools in that little drawer. You can see I've got some orange candles and a cute little bell. A candle holder in a nice orangey coppery tone that goes with the colour scheme. That's one I made. We have some little mushrooms that I made, one out of clay and one from a champagne cork. An incense burner for stick incense. That's actually my solar deity's incense from Juniper Moon Apothecary that I've been working with this season. My crystal ball, which is not crystal, but it's still very cool on its little sneaky stand, and my crystal ball that isn't even a crystal ball. This is actually made from marble and is an antique hand cooler to cool sweaty palms when you're writing. This is a little spell candle, happiness spell candle that I have not yet lit. We have this very cool finger labyrinth, goddess finger labyrinth there. This is a little mini book that I have created about mushrooms. I told you I'm super obsessed at the moment. So there's a whole lot of stuff in there. I'm not going to get that out one-handed. Sunflowers. I bought myself some sunflowers last weekend, and I have those at either end of the altar. So then moving along, we've got this little altar tile, which is good for crystal gritting. I have a tarot deck in this bag. It's the Tales of the Mystical Cats. If you just bear with me while I reach over and probably everything goes all wonky. This is the guidebook that goes with the deck. Working very cat themed at the moment because I also have over here my Sarah Jane's Art Magic Cat Oracle little Scully Skull candle holder that I made. There's my little ring binder Book of Moons, a little jar of bowl of bits, crystals, and my little Baba Yaga house and what have you. This little cauldron for burning incense on charcoal blocks or cone incense. Little goddess poppet with a charm. Then we've got, that's my bowl that was made by the Kynoch Witch. And behind the candles you can sort of see into the bowl where there's stones, there's rocks, there's a padlock, there's all sorts of bits and pieces. That's all sort of personal stuff. This is my candlestick with these really beautiful scented candles. And you can see more pigeonholes filled with stuff. Some of those are miniature potion ingredients that were created for me by a lovely artist during a Harry Potter craft swap. You can see a little pentacle offering bowl. There's a little tiny headwig. There's some black and white spell candles, a big chunk of rose quartz. What else have we got in there? More spells, more spell ingredients. There's a butterfly and a wing in a jar. We have a little tiny Ganesha and another little offering bowl with bits and bobs in it. Up here underneath the plants we have a full moon and a new moon that I use during rituals. A couple more pieces by Kira Adams, and you'll see my wands, two of my wands, which you might have seen in my wands video. And then on the top shelf, these are the pieces that don't change quite so much. You can see up on the edge of the apothecary cabinet is my word of the year plaque. I have some big candles up there that I really liked because they're hard to get to, and a raven. I have this little witch statue that I created. There's that cute little cup with moon phases on it. is filled with intention stick spells, and there's a jar of incense there. The strength card from a tarot deck, another little artwork by Kira Adams. The little witch actually came completely unglazed, and I added the broom obviously in the hat, and I painted her with lots of shiny metallic paints. A little spell box from the Kynoch Witch. I use that for healing charms, so it's like a healing manifestation box. Excuse me. Another bell and some charcoal discs, and there's bits and pieces in behind there with selenite wands and Palo Santo sticks. Honestly, I have so many Palo Santo sticks that I have been sent usually as a free gift in a parcel, and I don't, it's not, generally speaking, going to be ethically harvested, so I don't want it, but they come anyway. You don't ask for it, but it arrives, and it's kind of annoying. And I wish businesses would stop doing that. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's a good thing. Anyway, that was a little rant. I've got a tiny weeny baby mirror of Erised in the back there, a little tiny art spell, and a potion bottle. Another couple of pieces you might have seen. One is my moon candle, and one is my lovely unicorn who needs a name. I don't know what to call her yet. And then we have a little thing with feathers that I've collected, tiny weeny set of drawers that's got incenses and things in it. My little Humsa hand. There's a vase, a snake vase there with some fake flowers in it. And a couple of other bits and pieces. A little goddess I created, a snake that I bought secondhand. And then I've mentioned this one before from the serpent thread as well, that little piece of embroidery. So that shows you what's on my altar. As far as where to start when crafting an altar, there are no limits. There are there's no altar police that are going to come along and go, you're doing that wrong. You may get some gatekeepers who will make comments like that, but you can just tell them to get stuffed, because they are definitely not worth your time. There are traditions that have specific things that go on an altar. Certainly in the Wiccan tradition, there are ways of laying out an altar. You have candles or representations of the god and the goddess, and you have representations of the elements and bits and bobs, tools such as wands, athames, chalices, etc. But if you don't have a specific path that you follow that lays out for you how you need to create your altar and where it should be and all of those sorts of things, you can do whatever you damn well please. I do like to have representations of deity, and that can be a specific deity, as in, you might have seen my altar to my goddess, the Kaliach, or it could be something like this, which is not a specific deity. She's obviously a wheat holding type spirit, might not even be a goddess. I'm going to say she's a goddess, and she fits with the theme of the season, so that's why she's there. I do love to have seasonal things on my altar, but not everyone does. Some people make an altar and they never ever change anything on it. I like to refresh my altar. I think it gives it new energy, and it gives me an opportunity to use different items from my collection, because I've been collecting bits and pieces for so long. I also obviously make a lot of items for my altar, or I upcycle items for my altar. So I do love having fresh flowers on my altar, but I frequently don't have fresh flowers on my altar because it depends on either what is in my garden or if I've been to a shop that sells flowers, because I mostly get my groceries delivered. I'm not often in shops seeing what's in season flower wise. You can have obviously ritual items if you use them. So I use bells quite a lot for sound cleansing and for attracting energies. So I actually, as well, I've got 2 bells. I've got, both of them are brass, that one up there, and then the little tiny triquetra one down here. I like to have crystals on my altar, and again, that can be for a specific purpose, for a specific spell. Like you will see that my clear quartz generator is pretty much always on my altar. But other crystals come and go. Sometimes it's just because I've chosen a pretty collection, like this little one in here in this little cauldron, which is actually an ashtray, which I find so weird because who smokes these days? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It came in a mystery box. So it's actually quite cute. It's a perfect receptacle for crystals and feathers. Natural items are a great thing to add to an altar, and I think they also add that seasonal element if they have been collected, you know, on a nature walk that you've done just recently, and if they're current nature items. But again, they don't have to be. I mean, the shells are shells. Some of these are shells that have belonged to family members that I've sort of inherited. There are other shells that, I don't know if we can see them, but in that box there's things I've collected. There's crystals, there's salt, there's little painted rocks, there's that rusty lock which has got some symbolism for me. Art witching items appear on my altar, of course, all the time, and they're not all made by me either. You can see that, you know, I've already mentioned probably half a dozen different creators that have things sitting on my altar. I don't suggest you rush out and buy all the things for your altar. Don't do that, because you're going to buy things that you actually end up not resonating with, that you bought because you felt like you had to have them, not because you actually really love them or use them. And those are two sometimes things that cross over. It's like a Venn diagram, things you love and things you use. Now, I like to have all of my things pretty much in the center of that Venn diagram, things I use and I love. But I also have a lot of things on my altar that are purely there because they are beautiful and have some sort of meaning for me. So, as an example of that are the little Harry Potter items. You know, I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I am a fan of using, you know, I've got a whole video on using fiction, witchy fiction in real witchcraft. There are other creators out there who've made some amazing videos on pop pantheons. If you do a bit of a search for that, you know, not everyone connects with the ancient deities that are described, whether they're because they're not from their own personal culture, or whether it's because, you know, it can be hard to connect with something that feels unfamiliar. Use a pop pantheon. If you know, if your deity is Wonder Woman or, you know, Captain America or something, go for it if that works for you. I've got somewhere there's a TARDIS, I think, on my altar. I'm not sure where it is at the moment. It's tucked in a corner, because I love Doctor Who to an extent that it finds its way onto my altar. You can use no deity type of symbolism on your altar at all. If you don't work with deity and are a completely secular witch, cool. Don't have that shit on your altar. And if you don't know yet, if you're starting out in your craft, I feel like this is one of the hardest things when you're starting out in your craft, especially these days. You're bombarded with so much information, so much stuff. Everywhere you look, you know, in the Instagrammable witch and the witch aesthetic and all of that. And that's cool. You know, you can clearly see I am big on the aesthetic. It's a big part of the expression of my craft, but it's also not something that is essential to my craft. Art is essential to my life. I am very much an artist, and art is always going to be a part of my witchcraft because the two are not separate. But it can be hard. Where was I? I was saying that it's overwhelming. There's just, you're bombarded with so much stuff, and there's all these beautiful altars out there, and you know, you think when you start out, oh my God, you know, how am I ever going to accumulate all this stuff that I need for my altar? And I need to have all these crystals, and I need to have all these candle holders, and I need to have incense burners, and I have to have this, and I have to have that, and I have to have that, and I have to have that. You don't. Take a breath and step back and think, what am I going to use my altar for? Is it a space that's more of a shrine that just represents things and looks nice in my house? Is it a space I'm going to come to and, for example, read books on the craft, do spell work? Am I going to pull tarot cards or runes? Am I going to write in my book of shadows at my altar? I don't write in my book of shadows at my altar, because as you can see, my altar is pretty darn chockers, and there's only this tiny space in the center for doing things at. That's just the way it is. I will usually come to my altar to sit, maybe to meditate, light a candle, light some incense, give myself a spiritual break. I will sometimes pull tarot cards, obviously, or oracle cards. And sometimes I'll do that elsewhere. I might do it sitting on the sofa in front of the TV. I might do it at my desk. I might do it in bed before I go to sleep. Likewise with the reading of books. I do perform a lot of spell work at my altar, but again, not all of it. So much of my spell work is art. So that is either done in my studio or literally on my coffee table in front of the TV. I do a lot of art spells in front of the TV, but they will often then come and spend time on my altar to soak up the energies of my altar. Or they might live on my altar as a permanent or semi-permanent item, such as my little palmistry hand there, my little witchy goddessy thing, the manifestation box, which you've seen in another video, or you may have seen in another video if you've watched it. You know, there's little other art spells, like there's a little, it's actually a power love spell sitting in that little box just there. Yeah, so various things end up on my altar for various reasons. I think you just need to think about what you use your altar for, and therefore how much space you need, how much space you actually have. You might need to have a teeny tiny travel altar, or an altar in a small wooden box or a shoebox or a chest. You might have it tucked in the bottom of your wardrobe. It might be your bedside cupboard in your bedroom. It really depends on so many different factors. But you can put whatever you want on it. I personally feel that the items that go on it should have meaning for you. They should be, I was going to say they should be related to your witchcraft, but I don't think that's quite what I mean. Because for me, I mean, my whole house, I've said this before, my whole house is one giant altar. It's one giant sacred space. My sanctuary, my home sanctuary is very important to me, and everything that is in it has meaning, and by extension has spiritual meaning. So it's a matter of sort of point of view, I suppose. But it should have meaning to you. It should have personal meaning to you. And I think that when you're starting out, you choose items that you are going to work with, or things that represent aspects of your craft that are important to you. It doesn't have to be something that you work with for the next 30 years. It can be something you work with for the next 6 months. And then if it doesn't work for you, after that, you've decided this is not part of your craft, you can move it on. But that's why I think you shouldn't rush out and buy everything at once. Choose a few simple items. Get out into nature if you can, if you have the accessibility, if you have the physical ability to get out into your local park or some other natural spot. Choose a wand from sticks lying on the ground, find some stones, get out your paint pens, paint up a pentacle, paint up another symbol that means something to you. Grab your candles from your local supermarket or wherever. You don't have to have fancy ones. I mean, these dinner candles are beautiful and these are actually beautifully scented. But I will often also use just cheap white candles that come in a 6-pack from my local supermarket. I do have quite a lot of these little chime candles or spell candles, and I don't necessarily use them specifically for spells. Sometimes they're just either a representation of the elements maybe, or a colour associated with the season, as in the case of these orange ones here. And yeah, I just use an old scarf. Op shops, as I've said before, are such a great, place to look for witchy items. So this candlestick with the 3-branch candelabra came from the op shop. This little brass dish that's got a piece of Palo Santo and some bay leaves and a little birthday candle, op shop. The little brass snake that has my crystal ball sitting on it also came from the op shop. The little brass dish that's got the bell sitting on it came from the op shop. There's a little candle holder in the back there with the selenite ones in it. That came from the op shop. That the snake was thrifted. The little chest of drawers came from the op shop, and the little vase with the feathers in it with a sort of a Greek god on it, that was found in the op shop. The little purple shelf was an old CD holder that I repainted, came from the op shop. So you can see I've got a lot of items. I've got bits and pieces. If you have the funds and the inclination, often a subscription box is a great way to gather items. The only thing with that is that you get items sent to you. You don't choose what they are. But it's a nice way to accumulate cool witchy stuff, if that's your jam. I mean, the little bell with the triquetra came from a parcel, as did the little incense holder there, and a few other bits and pieces. Off the top of my head, I can't see anything else specifically that did. The little tongs and maybe even the cauldron as well. So you see, you can find bits and pieces all sorts of different ways. I know I've rambled. I rambled a lot. I hope that you have got some ideas on where to start. If you've got questions or comments or thoughts, please put them down below. I think this is a subject that people are really interested in. So the more comments, the better. Get a conversation going. Everyone can participate and, learn from each other what their thoughts are on altars and what they do, how they do, and why they do. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you about your own altars. If you want to do a video response to this, yes, please. Or show us your altars on Instagram. Just tag me in your post and let me know. Yeah. So guys, there's my Lughnasadh altar and a little bit of a waffle about altars. Let us know how you enjoyed it and what you do. And stay art witchy, and I will see you in the next video.